Why, hello there. Another month has flown by, and this month I read 10 books. So the first one that I read was Taboo in Four Colors by Tim McGregor, who also wrote the book Lure that I have mentioned before that I absolutely loved. This book got a pulp and noir type feel. It's about this comic book artist, and he has a relationship with one of the writers that's kind of like very eccentric. No one's seen him in several years. You know, he sends in his work, and then Wally Carson, he does all the artwork, and they correspond via notes in the margins. And so no one has any issue that their star author is off-site and they don't see him because he always turns his work in on time, until one day he doesn't. So Carson's boss is like, can you go talk to Salazar, which is the name of the writer? And he's like, why do I have to go do it? Why can't you go do it? And he's like, well, the guy kind of hates me. And then Carson's like, oh, okay. So he goes over there, and at first Salazar's wife answers the door, and she doesn't want to let him in to see him, and she's very like standoffish. And then eventually she relents and lets him go see Salazar, and Salazar is just in this weird like catatonic, ragey, strange state of being, and stuff quickly gets weird. Just a great frickin' story. I really like the way that Tim McGregor writes, and I really enjoyed Taboo in Four Colors. It's not even out yet. It'll be out November 22nd is when it comes out. And I'll have a link down below if you would like to check that out or pre-order it. So the next book that I read is Human Monsters, which is a horror anthology curated by Sadie Hartman and Ashley Sawyer. You may have heard of the Nightworms book packages. They put those together, which is a special horror package that comes out every month, where they have usually 2 books, and then there'll be like coffee or tea and stickers and bookmarks and all kinds of like cool horror related stuff. They're doing amazing things in the horror community. Honestly, they set the scene and are bringing light to new and upcoming authors, and they're absolutely amazing. So this book had been on my radar. I was lucky enough to get an arc of it. It is a dark, fantastic anthology of human monsters, which are, in my opinion, the scariest kind of monsters. The authors range from people that I had not heard of before to kind of mid-range to very well-established authors. So you have like Josh Malerman and Stephen Graham Jones, just a plethora of really just phenomenal talent. And the stories are dark and disturbing and absolutely fantastic. Then the next book I read, I received from Darklit Press. It was also an arc, another indie horror, and it was called Noose by Brendan LaFaro. And it's a Western, and it's set in 1872. And there is this outlaw, I guess one of the baddest outlaws in the West, Noose Holcomb, and he holds up this train. Basically murders everyone on the train except for, I think, like the driver and this kid, Rory Daggett. So he's orphaned early on, and he grows up to one day seek revenge on Noose Holcomb and his gang for what he did to him and what he took away from him. It was a really great story. At the end of it, there's another story, which is kind of a prequel that goes into a little bit of like Noose's childhood, which was a super surprise that I was not expecting, and it was absolutely awesome. And then I believe there's also going to be a few more books and more stuff happening in Buzzard's Edge, which is the setting of this. I've been getting more into Westerns lately, and that was definitely a fun read. And so also another book that I got and read this month, which I was a little scared to read, if I'm being honest, and it was Inside Out by Laura Gislason. And it's the goopiest, blobbiest grotesquerie of when humans turn into sludge. It's gross, and the back has a warning that's like, you might want a barf bag. And I was like, oh no. Oh no. I'm like, I am scared to read this. But I dove in head first, and it's great. It's really great. Yes, it's gross, but the way it was written, it's all these little vignettes into people's lives. Different scientists and kids and teenagers and families and religious weirdos. It's just how these people handle this horrible, weird pandemic that happens where people start melting and turning into these like blob things and melting into each other. And it's very gross, but it's also like shows just the messiness of the human condition. And there is a heart and soul and a lot of goop in this book, and I really enjoyed it. And that was another Darklit Press book, and they have a slew of awesome authors that they have recently signed. If you haven't had a chance to check out Darklit, I'll put a link down below if you want to go check out the list of people that they have and the books that they have. Like, so far what I've read has been really great. Another one that I had read before and probably mentioned before is This Is Where We Talk Things Out by Caitlin Marceau, and that's absolutely awesome. Had kind of like misery vibes and whatnot. Then next up, I read Monsterland by Ronnie LeBlanc, who was on the show Expedition Bigfoot. And this book talks about Bigfoot, UFOs, and orange orbs, for the phenomena, and how they kind of all tie together. And so where some people would say, oh, Bigfoot's just a big, hairy ape, you know, Ronnie LeBlanc posits that he's possibly a interdimensional being. I mean, I would explain why Bigfoot is always blurry and why he disappears all the time. No one can seem to catch him. Maybe he's a tree. I don't know. We don't know. It's all just theories, but this book is really great and it delves into that, and I'm super into the paranormal and cryptids and weird stuff like that, so I loved it. So then I read Ghost Eaters by Clay McLeod Chapman. Ghost Eaters is awesome. If you're looking for a horror book with a super unique premise, it's not like anything I've ever read. It's basically, do you want to get haunted? What if you could take a drug and you didn't get high, you got haunted? Well, that's the whole premise of this. It's weird and scary, and it takes a look at addiction too. Getting addicted to being haunted, chasing those ghosts and not wanting to let go, you know, of what's passed on and gone on from there. That premise, come on, you need it in your life. And then we read a book called Leech by Hiron Ennis, and that book is kind of a body horror book. In the northernmost regions, there's this estate that this baron and his family live in. A new doctor travels to them, and the new doctor is going to do an autopsy on the old doctor that had passed, and they weren't sure if it was a murder or suicide or what happened. And the new doctor is the old doctor, unbeknownst to everyone else, because there's a weird kind of parasitic being inside of the body that can transfer to other bodies, and it's kind of like a hive mind, and they can communicate to each other. So they're doing an autopsy on themselves. They pull this like weird black multi-legged creature out of the eye socket, and then the doctor's like, oh crap, we have competition, because it's another parasite that's taking over bodies. And it was creepy and atmospheric. I really enjoyed it. There were a few parts that I kind of got lost. It was a little confusing, but overall, you get the gist of the story. The way the author is with descriptions and words is truly fantastic, and has a beautiful cover too. I mean, look at that. I think the cover drew me to it, but also the story is really great. And then next, we read My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. And this book had been recommended by a few people that said that this was one of their favorite horror books. And honestly, it was awesome. It was my first Grady Hendrix book. The story is during the 80s and teenage girls in high school, and we all know teenage years kind of horrible and weird, and it had 80s nostalgia. There was a lot of gross stuff that happened, but this book also, you know, it was kind of touching at the end. But yeah, My Best Friend's Exorcism was awesome. If you haven't read it yet, definitely check it out if you're looking for a really good horror read with some 80s nostalgia. And then I read Pearl by Josh Malerman, which is about a pig that has, I would say, psychic powers, or like mind-altering powers. The pig pulls you into its web and makes you do what it wants you to do. And what does it want you to do? Pearl wants you to sing for your precious Pearl, and then kill, leave Pearl alone, hurt this person, hurt them, stay away from Pearl. Because, you know, I don't know, sometimes the pig has its day. Pigs have been slaughtered for food over all these years, and Pearl has something to say about it. Awesome book. What a unique concept. Another Josh Malerman hit. Just, yeah, that one was so weird and wacky, and I loved it. I feel like as I was reading it, you know, you kind of want the humans that are maybe to get away, but then you're also kind of like, you know, maybe you're kind of rooting for Pearl. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I'm weird. I mean, I've always rooted for Godzilla too, so I don't know. And then I read Thistlefoot. Oh my goodness, by Jenna Rose Nethercott. Thistlefoot is awesome. It's about these two siblings, Isaac and Bellatine. They acquire a strange inheritance, and it is Baba Yaga's house, a house that is on chicken feet, that can run and move and wobbles all over the place. It's about running from your ghosts and realizing at some point you gotta face your ghost. And there's what comes along with this inheritance, unfortunately, is there's this man of shadows chasing this house because of the house's history, and Bellatine and Isaac will have to eventually face this man and figure out how to defeat him. It's a story about remembering your ancestors' history and remembering your ancestors and telling their stories. And it was so beautiful and magical and heartfelt. It's so flippin' good. Now, if I were to pick a favorite out of all these, oh, can I even do that? They were all so good. But I think Thistlefoot was my favorite. Thistlefoot, Ghost Eaters are pretty tied. Those were probably my two favorites. And the rest are awesome as well. So should I pick favorites? I don't know, but those are my two favorites. So if you like videos where I talk about multiple books that I have read, the next video coming up will also be a video about multiple books that I've read, so stick around, check it out. And if you had fun hanging out today, boop that like button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.